This is a country that has never experienced colonialism. Its people have lived in peace with one another for hundreds of years, and its borders were drawn by a European power without any regard for the people who lived there. This is the story of Botswana. Before we get into this video, let me ask you a question. Which country in Africa was never colonized by a European power? If you answered Botswana, then give yourself a pat on the back because you'd be right. But if you answered any other country, then don't feel bad because that answer would also be right. You see, when it comes to Africa, many of us have this wrong idea that the entire continent was colonized by Europeans, when that simply is true. There are 5 countries that were never formally colonized by Europeans: Ethiopia, Liberia, South Africa, Ghana, and Botswana. Today we'll be looking at Botswana. Where exactly is Botswana located? Well, here is a map of Africa. As you can see, Botswana is located in southern Africa, right in the middle of the continent. It is bordered by South Africa to the south, by Zimbabwe to the northeast, Zambia to the north, and Namibia to the west. And just so you can get a feel for where it's located, here is a map of the world. And as you can see, Botswana is right in the middle of the African continent. So now that we know where Botswana is located, let's take a look at its history. The earliest human ancestors are believed to have arrived in Botswana around 200,000 years ago. However, the earliest evidence of modern humans in the area dates back to around 100,000 years ago. These early humans were hunter-gatherers, who lived in small nomadic groups. They would follow the herds of animals in search of food and would have no permanent homes. Their lives were hard, but they were able to survive by being very adaptable and resourceful. Around 2,000 years ago, the first agricultural communities began to emerge in what is today Botswana. This led to the development of larger settlements and the emergence of new technologies such as ironworking. These early farmers were able to grow crops such as sorghum, millet, and cowpeas. And this allowed them to stay in one place and raise cattle. Cattle were very important to these early societies, and they became wealthier by acquiring more cattle. Having more cattle meant that you could give some to your daughter's family when she gets married and still have enough left over to remain wealthy. So if you were born into a family with a lot of cattle, your future was pretty secure. But if you were born into a poor family with few cattle, your life would be much harder. In fact, your life would be so hard that many young men chose to leave their families and become what is called a gongona is a young man who leaves his family and lives with another man. He does this usually to learn a skill or trade from the older man in exchange for food and protection. The society we've been talking about up until this point is called the Bantu. They are a group of people who speak a language called Setswana and live in the area that is now Botswana, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. The Bantu were never a unified empire or kingdom, but rather a collection of different tribes and chieftains who were loosely associated with one another. They lived in peace with one another for hundreds of years, only going to war when one chieftain wanted to acquire more land or cattle. In the late 1800s, European explorers and missionaries began to arrive in the area. The Portuguese were the first Europeans to make contact with the Bantu people in the 15th century. However, it wasn't until the 1800s that the British and Boers began to explore the area. The Boers were a Dutch-speaking people who had migrated to South Africa from the Cape Colony in search of new land to farm. They came into conflict with the Bantu people who were already living there. The Bantu were defeated and forced to move to smaller territories. This is when the modern borders of Botswana were established, splitting the Bantu people away from their ancestral lands. In 1946, the British government granted Botswana self-governing status, and in 1966, it became fully independent. Today, Botswana is a constitutional monarchy, with a strong economy based on mining and tourism. Now, before I end this video, I want to tell you a little bit about the culture of Botswana. The official language of Botswana is English, but the most widely spoken language is Setswana, is a Bantu language that is also spoken in neighboring South Africa and Zimbabwe. Other languages spoken in Botswana include Kalanga Kaga. The majority of Botswana people are Christian, although there are also Muslims and people who practice traditional African religions. If you ever visit Botswana, you will likely see women wearing a colorful blanket or shawl called a the thobe is a traditional Botswana garment that is worn by both men and women. It is typically made from a lightweight cotton fabric and is often decorated with beads or other ornaments. Men may also wear a type of loincloth called a sapetla, are usually made from animal skins and are worn during special occasions, such as weddings or funerals. Well, folks, that brings us to the end of this video about the history of Botswana. What did you find most interesting about Botswana's history? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're down there, be sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe for more content. Thanks for watching.